I had been working at Northbridge Consulting for 8 years. Not a lifetime, but definitely long enough to know every inch of that sleek glass office. I knew every whispered conversation in the halls, every glance exchanged inside the elevator, and every client's name filed away in the dusty corners of my memory. People called me reliable, organized, and quiet. But never brilliant. That label was reserved for folks like my boss, Clarissa Doyle. She climbed the ranks quickly, earning a promotion just 2 years after joining the firm. Charismatic, sharp, and utterly unchallengeable, she moved through the office like she owned the place long before she officially did. Most admired her. I respected her. At least, I used to. I'm Lizzie Anders, 33 years old. And until 9:42 a.m. last Friday, I was Northbridge's Senior Operations Coordinator. The day began like any other. I was reviewing the final logistics report for the Baxter account, one of our biggest corporate clients, when Clarissa strode in, heels tapping across the polished floor, followed by Ava, the intern I'd been mentoring. Ava was fresh out of college at 22, bright, eager, but still inexperienced. For 3 months, I had patiently trained her, walking her through everything from procurement procedures to client protocols. She looked up to me, or so I believed. Clarissa stopped beside my desk, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Boardroom now. A few heads turned. It was rare for her to use that tone, except with suppliers or subcontractors. I stood there, confused, heart pounding. Inside the boardroom, Ava hovered awkwardly near the wall, while Clarissa slammed a printed email onto the table before me. You sent this file to Baxter without removing the internal projections tab. I blinked. The document looked familiar, something I'd reviewed last Tuesday, but hadn't finalized. I didn't send the file, I said quietly. I handed it to Ava for final formatting, just like we agreed. Clarissa's eyes narrowed. Ava said you told her it was ready. Ava shifted uneasily, avoiding my gaze. I told her to double-check before sending it, I replied carefully. It was only a draft. Clarissa turned away, hands on hips. Do you realize what this cost us? She said coldly. Baxter's board was threatening to pull the entire account. My stomach sank. That account made up nearly 40% of our yearly revenue. I opened my mouth, ready to defend myself further, but Clarissa whipped around and pointed a perfectly manicured finger at me. You stupid girl, she snapped. You were never the smart one here, just convenient. Her words lingered like smoke. Then she did something worse than yelling. She walked back into the open office, called everyone's attention, and declared, Just so everyone knows, Lizzie here has been let go effective immediately for negligence on the Baxter account. Silence, broken by a few awkward coughs, and then, God help them, some people laughed. Whether out of discomfort or loyalty to Clarissa, I'll never know. I didn't cry or argue. I quietly packed my things, placing my mug and office plant in a spare box from under the printer, then walked out. My coat was still warm from the morning sun when I stepped outside, but I felt nothing. Not the breeze, the sting in my throat, or the curious stares from passers-by as I stood on the curb holding my box, waiting for a taxi. I didn't call anyone. I just went home that evening, while city lights flickered beyond my window and the day's warmth faded from my apartment walls. I made one phone call. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. Chambers and Lola, this is Diane. I cleared my throat and kept my voice steady. Maybe too steady. Hi, I need to speak with someone about wrongful termination and possible corporate fraud. That night, sleep eluded me. Though my body lay still in bed for hours, my mind kept replaying Clarissa's voice on repeat. You were never the smart one. Just convenient 8 years of loyalty erased in seconds. A reputation quietly built, shattered before everyone I thought respected me, or at least understood my worth. But staring at the ceiling in the early morning light, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't just a cruel outburst. It was deliberate. Clarissa hadn't fired me behind closed doors. She hadn't offered HR a chance to mediate or spoken to me like a person. No, she staged it. A performance meant to humiliate me, strip away my credibility before I could ask any questions. And worse, Ava, the intern I trained, stood there and said nothing. The next morning, I sat across from Eleanor Nash, a partner at Chambers and Lola, late 40s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. The kind of woman who didn't waste words or miss a detail. She scanned the intake form I'd filled out and raised an eyebrow. You've never had disciplinary issues, stellar reviews. You've seen your role clearly. And this was your first mistake? I shook my head. It wasn't my mistake. Then why would they say it was? She asked. I hesitated before answering carefully. Because someone needed a scapegoat. Eleanor leaned back. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. For over an hour, I laid it all out. The Baxter account, the intern, the draft file I flagged, Clarissa's outburst, the public firing. And then I confessed something I hadn't admitted aloud before. Last month, I noticed a discrepancy in the vendor payment log. 2 invoices for the same work, same vendor ID, but slightly different amounts. When I raised it with Clarissa, she brushed it off, saying the vendor must have made a mistake. And did they? Eleanor asked, locking eyes with me. No, I said. I called the vendor directly, they only sent 1 invoice. Eleanor's fingers froze over her keyboard. You're saying someone created a duplicate payment request? I nodded slowly. 2 weeks later, I lost access to the payment dashboard. Clarissa said they were restructuring access levels, but no one else on the team had their permissions changed. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she grabbed a yellow legal pad and wrote a single word in all caps. Retaliation. Do you have access to any documents? She asked. I hesitated. Maybe I have backups, old drafts, email chains, nothing official, but enough to piece together the timeline. That's a start, she said. And Lizzie, don't delete or change anything from now on. Every move counts. I exhaled slowly. The heavy weight in my chest didn't disappear, but it shifted. Eleanor wasn't just humoring me. She believed what I said, and more, she saw something to act on that afternoon. I went back to my apartment and started digging through my personal files. I always saved my work to my personal cloud folders, not because I was paranoid, but since I often burned the midnight oil at home and found the company VPN clunky, I dug through my archives until I located the Baxter file. There it was. A draft dated 2 days before everything blew up, clearly labeled preliminary right in the file name, along with an email I'd sent to Ava. It read, Hi Ava, please double-check all tabs and delete any internal sheets before sending this to Baxter. This is still a working draft. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The proof was staring back at me, hidden away in the quiet places nobody bothered to inspect. Just as I was about to organize the files for Eleanor, my phone buzzed. An unknown number popped up. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? A familiar, hesitant voice whispered back. Lizzie, it's Ava. My stomach twisted. She whispered, I didn't know she was going to do that to you. She said you approved the file. I was scared. I'm sorry. I cut her off. Why are you calling me now, Ava? Silence. Then, because I think she's about to pull the same stunt on someone else, and there's something you have to see. Her voice shook, but beneath the fear, I caught a note of guilt. I'm sorry, Lizzie. I swear I didn't realize Clarissa would throw you under the bus like that. She made it sound like it was no big deal. No big deal, I repeated slowly. She fired me in front of everyone. I know, Ava said softly. I never thought she'd actually do it. She paused, swallowed, then sighed. Can I come over? There's something I need to show you. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up, bitter and betrayed, but the part that had spent the last 48 hours piecing this mess together told me better. Come and bring everything. Half an hour later, she arrived, jeans and hoodie, her normally bright face clouded by something heavier than shame. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. We sat at my dining table. I poured tea, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she opened her laptop and turned the screen toward me. I took this screenshot the day after you got fired. I don't know why. I just had a bad feeling. It was an internal memo I hadn't seen before. Notes on departmental restructuring, dated 2 weeks prior to the Baxter incident. Next to my name was a sentence in red. Pending replacement, prepare onboarding for Ava. My breath caught. They were planning to replace me, I said flatly. Ava nodded, barely whispering. Clarissa told me I'd be promoted if I took on more responsibility, Said it was part of some leadership development plan. I didn't realize she meant this all along. She had this planned before the Baxter email was even sent. I cut in. I think she's done this before, Ava added quietly. Before I joined, with a guy in procurement, Henry something. People said he just disappeared one day. Henry, I remembered. Meticulous, soft-spoken. We'd worked together on a supply chain project 2 years back. Then one Monday, he stopped showing up. Management said he was on leave, but he never returned. I dove into my laptop, searching old project files, emails, even Slack archives. There he was, and then gone like a ghost. Access revoked, email shut off. No farewell, no announcement. Just like me. Clarissa's method is straightforward, I muttered, thinking aloud. Find someone who knows too much, isolate them, discredit them, then swap them out for someone easier to manage. And she's also cooking vendor payments, Ava added quietly. I froze. What? I overheard her on the phone, Ava said, 3 days before you were fired. She was arguing with someone about numbers not matching and said something like, just duplicate the last payment file and call it reconciliation. I didn't get it then, but I do now, and Eleanor will too. I grabbed a flash drive and began copying everything. Emails, spreadsheets, Ava's screenshot, the draft Baxter file, everything. Why help me now? I finally asked. Ava looked down at her hands. Because you treated me like a person. You taught me everything and never talked down to me, and I let her use me to take you down. Her sincerity hit me hard. It didn't undo what happened, but it softened the edges. Then she added, Clarissa's targeting Brian next. Brian from compliance. Ava nodded. He raised questions last week about some oddities in our audit logs. She's been meeting with HR behind closed doors ever since. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just personal revenge anymore. It was a pattern, a system. I sent all the files to Eleanor with the subject. This goes deeper than we thought. Then I called her directly. She answered on the first ring. I have evidence, I said flat out. Solid evidence, and a witness. Her tone sharpened immediately. I'm listening. I walked her through the files, the pattern, Ava's account, and the connection to Henry and Brian. Her silence said everything. When I finished, she said, This isn't just wrongful termination anymore. If you're right, we're looking at coordinated abuse of power, embezzlement, witness intimidation, maybe corporate fraud. What now? I asked. A pause. You don't make the next move, Lizzie, I do. Monday morning arrived like a storm, loud inside my chest, quiet outwardly. I sat by the window, drinking black coffee, staring at the heavy gray clouds cloaking the city like a secret ready to erupt. The documents had been sent, the emails forwarded, the pieces laid out now. It was Eleanor's turn exactly at 9 a.m. My phone rang. Lizzie, Eleanor said without beating around the bush. I just got off the phone with Northbridge's internal counsel. My heart skipped. They're rattled. I sent them a formal notice today. We're filing a wrongful termination suit citing retaliation, defamation, and constructive dismissal. I included Ava's memo and requested an injunction to stop any deletion of internal communications from the last 90 days. I exhaled slowly. And their response? Panic, first denial, then a request to negotiate privately. I laughed, dry and humorless. Of course. Regarding Clarissa, they claimed she acted on HR's information. Convenient, isn't it? But they're already distancing themselves from her fast. I stayed silent for now, letting it all sink in. This was no longer just about me. She hadn't just fired me. It was about the toxic culture she'd built, the people she'd stepped over and silenced, people like Henry, like Brian, like me. Eleanor spoke calmly. I have a contact at the Department of Labor. They handle whistleblower protections. I want you to reach out to them today. Off the record for now, but if this goes public, you'll need protection. Protection? I asked, eyebrow raised, though she couldn't see it. Yes, she said. You're a threat now. Lizzie, Clarissa knows it. The firm knows it. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of empowerment and unease. That afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Ava again, looking pale and worn. She knows, Ava said as soon as I opened the door. Clarissa called me into her office this morning. Said there's an ongoing legal matter, and I'm not to speak to anyone. Not you, not HR, nobody. Then she offered me a full-time position starting next week. My jaw clenched. She's buying your silence. Ava nodded, looking sick to her stomach. But it's too late for that. I said firmly, the ball's already rolling. Ava hesitated, then pulled out her phone and handed it over. She left the room during our meeting, and She looked away. I hit record, don't know if it'll help, but I did. I played the recording. Clarissa's voice came through sharp and smug. We can't have people digging into every little mistake. What matters is loyalty. I've protected this firm's reputation for years. If that means cutting a few loose ends, so be it. My blood ran cold. That wasn't arrogance. That was calculated, deliberate intent, Ava, I said slowly. You just gave us the nail in her coffin. By evening, Eleanor had the audio clip. We'll use this strategically, she said. Not yet, but soon. That night, I got an unexpected email from Brian's subject line, I think I'm next. He'd been placed on administrative review, vague mention of compliance inconsistencies. Brian had been with Northbridge for over a decade. Never a single write-up. Now the pattern was repeating. Different target, same game. I forwarded the message to Eleanor and stared at the screen long after the confirmation pinged. Clarissa had built an empire on fear, control, and manipulation. She rose by crushing the quiet, the loyal, the trusting, those too meek to fight back. But now, the quiet ones had evidence we were done being convenient. As I shut my laptop, I thought back to the moment she fired me. Her voice loud and cruel, the room thick with stifled laughter, my dignity packed away with a coffee mug and a dying plant. She thought she ended something that day. She had no idea what she'd started. 3 days later, Northbridge Consulting froze. It began as a whisper, something stirring beneath the surface. By week's end, it was official. An independent legal investigation had been launched. Every department head notified Clarissa, usually first to lead morning briefings, was nowhere to be seen. I didn't need to be inside to feel the tremor shaking those glass walls. The internal announcement was a polished, vague statement. To ensure transparency, the executive team has engaged an external legal firm to review recent employee concerns regarding management conduct and operations. We remain committed to the highest ethical standards. But everyone knew they always do behind closed doors. Hushed conversations passed from desk to desk. Some whispered that the board was preparing changes. Others speculated about Clarissa's sudden absence. One brave junior analyst posted a cryptic message on the company Slack. Guess the intern wasn't the only one watching. I observed it all from my quiet apartment. Updates came through Eleanor. She's being questioned, Eleanor told me late Thursday. They've uncovered discrepancies in the vendor ledger payments processed without authorization, duplicate invoices, and 3 reports that appear altered after submission. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. It's finally happening. It is, Eleanor agreed. But you need to be ready for what? I asked. For when they realize just how central you are to all this. The next morning, I received an official email from Northbridge's legal department requesting an in-person meeting, representation welcome. It said, that was all I needed to know. Eleanor and I arrived together at the firm's downtown headquarters. Being back felt surreal. The security guard didn't meet my eye. Familiar faces glanced at me quickly, then looked away. No laughter this time. We were led to a glass conference room overlooking the city. Inside sat 2 senior partners from the legal firm investigating, an HR representative, and a board member I barely recognized. Clarissa wasn't there. Miss Anders, one investigator began, thank you for meeting with us. We hope you can clarify some matters related to your termination and internal concerns. Eleanor spoke before I could reply. My client will be fully transparent, but let me be clear. This is not a favor, it's a courtesy. She deserves the respect she was denied while employed. The investigator nodded. Understood. I laid it all out. The Baxter account, the manipulated files, Ava's memo, the disappearances of Henry and Brian, my revoked access, the vendor invoice irregularities, the conversations I documented, and Ava's recording. When I played Clarissa's voice, the room fell silent. One board member pressed his lips thin. The HR rep scribbled nervously. "We'll need to authenticate the source," the investigator said, voice tight. "Do that," Eleanor replied. "Meanwhile, my client will file a formal whistleblower disclosure. You can cooperate or resist. But I suggest you listen. This time, Lizzie will be heard." Leaving the building, the air felt different, lighter, sharper. Outside, Ava waited on the steps. "They pulled me into a meeting this morning," she said breathlessly. "I told them everything, the fake training, the false promises, the pressure to backdate documents. I'm done covering for her." I nodded. "You did the right thing." "No," Ava said. "You did, I just finally followed your lead." That night, Brian messaged me. "Clarissa suspended investigation expanding past terminations reopened. They're calling it a culture audit. Whatever you started, it's working." For the first time in weeks, I finally let myself breathe deeply. Not because it was over, but because the lies were unraveling and the truth was finally louder than her voice. It was a quiet Wednesday morning when an email arrived that changed everything. The subject line read, "Resolution and Reinstatement Proposal." I stared at it for a long moment before opening. The message was short but powerful. A formal admission of wrongdoing, a full withdrawal of my termination, reinstatement to my role with back pay, and continuation of my benefits, pension, and seniority. The last paragraph struck me as more than mere words. "We recognize that Ms. Anders acted with integrity, professionalism, and genuine concern for the organization's well-being. We deeply regret the treatment she endured and thank her for bringing critical issues to our attention." It was signed by the board. Clarissa's name was nowhere to be found because she was no longer with Northbridge Consulting. The investigation had unearthed far more than anyone expected. Forged documents, retaliatory firings, and a string of quietly buried ethics violations stretching back nearly 5 years. HR had been complicit, as had a member of the board. By the time the final report was ready, Clarissa had been officially terminated for cause without severance. 2 HR managers were also dismissed, and the company had launched a complete overhaul of its compliance systems, including a new ethics and accountability task force. They asked me to lead it. I turned them down. I didn't want to spend my career cleaning up someone else's mess. I wanted to build, not fix instead. I accepted a role at a nonprofit supporting whistleblowers and workplace fairness initiatives nationwide. I became a speaker, mentor, and guide for people who felt silenced, scared, and small. People like I once was. Eleanor stayed on speed dial. And Ava stayed in my life too. She had officially resigned from Northbridge and joined a firm that valued transparency. "We met for coffee a few weeks after things settled," she said, looking lighter than before. "I can't stop thinking about the day you were fired." I nodded. The silence in the office. No one said a word, including me. "You were scared," she said. "So was I. But you stood up." "I stood up when it hurt. That's the difference," I said. She smiled. "You showed me strength doesn't have to be loud." We talked about others who had come forward. Brian, now leading compliance training, a former finance assistant who uncovered more falsified ledgers, even Henry Walters, who reached out from across the country after hearing what happened. "Guess I wasn't crazy." He wrote, "She made me think I was." 6 months after the investigation closed, Northbridge released a public statement acknowledging a pattern of retaliatory leadership, praising whistleblowers, and pledging ongoing reform. I read it without emotion, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need their apology to know I'd done the right thing. Justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes as quiet reforms, silent acknowledgments, and rewritten policies, because someone refused to stay silent. And that was enough. A year later, I received an invitation in the mail from Northbridge's new CEO, Miriam, brought in to clean house. She was launching a leadership program focused on ethical management, and she offered me the keynote speaker role. I thought long and hard. At first, I almost said no. But then I remembered what Eleanor told me during our last meeting. "You didn't just expose the problem, Lizzie. You rewrote the playbook." So I walked into that conference hall wearing a navy blue suit, the kind Clarissa once wore like armor. But on me, it didn't feel like armor. It felt like clarity. When I stepped to the podium, The room fell silent. I looked out at the bright eyes and tense postures, people climbing ladders, trying to stay afloat, striving to do the right thing, and I said this. I was once called a stupid girl, told I was never the smart one, fired in front of coworkers, and laughed at as I packed my things. But here's the thing about being underestimated. When they don't see you coming, they don't see the strength you've built quietly, carefully, brick by brick. If you're in a room where speaking the truth costs you everything, then that room doesn't deserve you. And you don't have to burn everything down to rise sometimes, you just have to leave the door open, so the next person knows which way out is. The room erupted in applause. I didn't smile for them. I smiled for myself, because finally, my voice was the loudest thing in the room.